Without a female lead, the protagonist is not the Virgin Mary, not soft-hearted, with a bodhisattva's heart and thunderous means. Do your officials not care if the children of wealthy families forcibly rob common women? Does the demonic cult poison the people? Do you care about Wudang and Shaolin? I'm in charge. Huashan Sect Management. Since the righteous path in the world is difficult to speak of, then I will be the first light that breaks through the darkness. Don't wait for the sun, if there is no sun afterwards, I will be the only light. With the heart of a bodhisattva, use thunderous means. Chapter 1. Huashan. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Huashan. Known as the most dangerous mountain in the world. The Huashan sect has been established for over 200 years and is highly acclaimed in the martial arts world. Our Huashan disciples have always adhered to the responsibility of eliminating demons and defending the Tao, and promoting justice. If you join our Huashan sect today, you must practice diligently and not be lazy. Do not do anything wrong or cause trouble. If you break the rules and regulations of the sect and damage the reputation of our Huashan sect, I will not spare you lightly. Huashan Martial Arts Training Ground. There stood 6 or 7 young children in the spacious space, some big and some small, some 7 or 8 years old, and some 5 or 6 years old. However, these young children had colorful faces and were as thin as wood, making them people who often went hungry. In front of them was a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man has a jade-like face, dressed in a wide black robe, with 5 strands of captivating beard under his cheeks. He has a refined temperament, holding a folding fan in his hand, which is very elegant, and there is a sense of righteousness between his eyebrows. The words just now came from his mouth. However, although this person has an extraordinary temperament and his clothes are also made of silk, they look a bit outdated. Senior brother, these children are still young. How can they understand what you say? At this moment, a gentle female voice sounded next to her, which was a beautiful woman. He, junior sister. Upon hearing the woman speak, the middle-aged man turned his head and smiled. I don't expect them to understand it now, but I also want them to know that our Huashan sect is a prestigious and righteous sect, and we must abide by the right path. After saying these words, the middle-aged man turned back to look at these young children, and his expression became serious again. Did you remember everything? The young children on the field nodded in confusion, their voices echoing one after another. Got it. I understand. Upon hearing these different answers, the middle-aged man's face showed a hint of helplessness, but he didn't say anything either. At this moment, the beautiful woman beside her spoke again. Let's pay respects to our teachers. Just now, the young children with a bewildered expression quickly knelt down and kowtowed to the middle-aged man and beautiful woman upon hearing these words. Greet master and mother. Their voice was childish but neat, obviously someone had taught them before. All right, get up. After the young children knocked their heads 3 times, the middle-aged man gently lifted the folding fan to signal them to get up. The young children then stood up and remained in place. Moon Silver, Xiao Jun. The beautiful woman shouted towards the nearby area, and immediately 2 young women walked over. There was a group of people watching from a distance where they were standing. There are both men and women in this group, who are not very old and carry a sword in their hands. Before, when the middle-aged man was conducting the apprenticeship ceremony, they had been watching from the edge without speaking, but their faces were all curious. Master. Master. 2 young women who were called by the beautiful woman came to her and saluted the middle-aged man and her separately. The middle-aged man nodded lightly without saying anything, and the beautiful woman ordered, the apprenticeship ceremony has been completed now. You 2 should take the children to eat. Yes. Yue Buqun and Xiao Jun nodded in agreement, then took the group of young children to the cafeteria for a meal. After hearing that they could eat, the young children showed a hopeful expression on their faces and quietly followed the 2 of them away. Senior brother, it's getting more and more chaotic outside now. After these young children left, the beautiful woman showed a worried expression. I heard that there is a drought in the north, where there is a famine, and I haven't heard any news of the court's relief efforts. Many people have starved to death there, and the people can't survive anymore. Many people have left with their families. The beautiful woman had an unbearable expression on her face. They just want to live, the people are too suffering. Upon hearing the beautiful woman's words, the middle-aged man had no expression on his face and looked steadily into the distance. His eyes were very calm, making it difficult to see what he was thinking inside. After a while, the middle-aged man shook his head at the beautiful woman as if he had regained his senses and said, "Junior sister, in this world, treacherous officials are in power, corrupt officials are rampant, and the people are struggling to make a living. Although we have the intention to change, we are powerless. The people are suffering, and we just want to barely survive." The beautiful woman remained silent. Yeah. Their Huashan sect is also in turmoil, and their current situation can be much better than that of these common people. Internally, there is a serious shortage of funds for certain sects, while externally, there are Song Mountain sect and demon cult eyeing closely. Their situation is not an exaggeration, as they are struggling step by step. Thinking of this, the beautiful woman couldn't help but look at the middle-aged man. "Senior brother, we have brought back so many children from our trip, and the expenses on the mountain will increase again. We don't have much money left. Half a young man eats a poor old man. 7 or 8 years old is the age for physical growth, let alone these children who need to practice martial arts. Practicing martial arts is very physically demanding, so they eat even more." Their Huashan sect was already struggling, and although there were not many disciples under their sect, they were not few. These disciples were diligently practicing and had no way to earn money. Their food, clothing, and expenses were all provided by the Huashan sect, and the economic pressure was already high. The leader of the Huashan sect was a middle-aged man, and the burden of the Huashan sect was on him. If these newly introduced young children were added, the economic pressure would be even greater. They don't have much origin in the Huashan sect, and rely solely on middle-aged men to find ways to maintain the sect, so no wonder beautiful women have such a saying. "It's okay." The middle-aged man shook his head and said with a smile, "Junior sister, don't worry. I will solve it. In a few days, I will go down the mountain again to catch a few bandits and hunt down their nests to exchange for silver rewards." The beautiful woman sighed even more upon hearing this. "Thank you for your hard work, senior brother. I miss you, the leader of the Huashan sect, known as the Gentleman's Sword, Yue Buqun. You are also well known in the martial arts world. Now, I want to lower my status and catch bandits to exchange for silver rewards. It's really a disgrace to your reputation." Hee hee. Yue Buqun smiled and opened the folding fan, gently shaking it a few times before saying, "No matter how good your reputation is, you can't eat it as a meal. I am the leader of the Huashan sect, and Chonger, Shaner, and Ninger are their masters. We should be responsible for them. Besides, these children have no parents and their parents are starving. If I don't care, they won't be able to survive. It's just a matter of adding a few more mouths. In this world, we are small and powerless, unable to change, but we can still do something. Besides, I'm going to catch a big thief and just exchange it for a bounty. This is also to eliminate harm to the people, and it doesn't mean losing my reputation as a gentleman's sword." Looking at Yue Buqun's indifferent smile and calm demeanor, Ning Zhong's heart was also calmed down. After hearing Yue Buqun's words, a smile appeared on her face, and then she curiously asked, "By the way, we only returned to the mountain today. Why didn't we see Chonger, Shaner, and Ninger when we came back?" Upon hearing Ning Zhong's words, Yue Buqun also remembered that he had indeed not seen Ling Hu Chong and the others, so he looked at his disciples in the distance and called out, "There is a great deal." Chapter 2. Yue Buqun. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Upon hearing Yue Buqun's shout, a young disciple who was watching from not far away quickly ran over, while the other disciples saw that the ceremony before entering the door had also been completed and gathered together. Master, Mother. Lu Dao bowed in front of Yue Buqun and the others. Yue Buqun nodded and asked, "Where are Chong'er and Shaner? Why haven't you seen them?" Lu Dao replied, "Master, senior brother went to Hanzhong a few days ago." Yue Buqun frowned and remained silent. Linghu Chong is an impatient person who can't sit still on the mountain and likes to run around. He is usually okay, but if he and Ningzhong are not in Huashan, Linghu Chong will definitely go down the mountain to play. This has become a habit, and he didn't feel surprised, just continued to ask. "What about Shaner?" Upon hearing his master's question, Lu Dao looked a bit embarrassed and stuttered, "Little junior sister. Little junior sister." I talked for a long time but didn't say it out. Other disciples such as Yingbeiluo and Shidaizi also looked embarrassed. Yue Buqun frowned and asked, "Tell me the truth." Lu Dao was startled by this questioning and quickly replied, "Junior sister, she went to Hanzhong with senior brother." Nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, Yue Buqun angrily rebuked, which scared Lu Dao not to look up. Yue Buqun looked at the group of disciples and scolded, "Ling Shan has always been mischievous. When I left, I repeatedly reminded you not to let her go down the mountain and urged her to focus on cultivation. What did you do? She is young and her martial arts skills are not yet perfect. Now that the world outside is so chaotic, she has a rebellious temperament. If she offends someone who shouldn't be offended outside, being scolded will be small, losing her life will be big, and you should just let her do it." On the side, Ningzhong frowned and remained silent. Although Yue Buqun usually looks like a scholar and has a kind face, his anger at this moment is extremely majestic. A group of disciples were frightened and knelt down one after another, one of whom had gray hair. The elderly man said, "Master, the little junior sister and the big senior brother have been childhood sweethearts. This time when the big senior brother went down the mountain, the little junior sister insisted on going together. The big brother couldn't resist her, saying that since the little junior sister wanted to go, it was better to go out and play. Staying on the mountain all the time might make her feel sick. He will take good care of the little junior sister carefully, so we don't have to worry. We really can't stop her." Lauderno knelt on the ground and said trembling. After hearing his words, Yue Buqun did not respond, only a faint hint of disgust and killing intent flashed in his gaze, but then disappeared. Looking at the group of disciples kneeling on the ground, Yue Buqun frowned tightly and didn't say a word. Finally, Ning Zhongzi on the side spoke up to help them out. "All right, everyone get up." Upon hearing Ning Zhongzi speak, disciples such as Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming breathed a sigh of relief and stood up one after another. "If the teacher asks, at least the master won't punish them." Ning Zhongzi said, "Since Shaner and Chong'er are together, with Chong'er taking care of them, there shouldn't be any problems. Let's just go out and experience." My wife helped them out on the side, and Yue Buqun didn't want to be harsh anymore. Instead, he continued to ask Lu Dao, "Where's Ning'er? Why haven't you seen him?" He also followed Shaner and the others to Hanzhong. Lu Dao said cautiously, returning to master, "Junior brother Jiangning did not come with the master brothers. He went down the mountain 7 days ago." Yue Buqun frowned at the words and said, "What is he doing down the mountain?" At the same time as questioning, Yue Buqun's heart also ignited a hint of anger. Before leaving Huashan, he reminded them not to go down the mountain without any worries and to devote themselves to cultivation on the mountain. On the one hand, although Huashan is now one of the 5 sacred sword schools, ordinary young people dare not have any ideas for the Huashan school. However, Yue Buqun is afraid that during his absence from Huashan, the left cold Zen of the Songshan school and the Sun Moon Church will secretly send people to attack his disciples. On the other hand, among the disciples of the Huashan sect today, except for Ling Huchong and Jiangning, the martial arts of all other disciples are in a mess. Yue Buqun also urged them to work hard to practice and not tarnish the reputation of the Huashan sect. It's just that if Ling Huchong doesn't listen, he's prepared. His daughter Yu Lingshan also followed Ling Huchong down the mountain, although it surprised him a bit, it was understandable. But what he didn't expect was that even the most peaceful among his disciples, Jiangning, violated his orders. It seems that during my absence, you all started to let go of yourself. Yue Buqun had anger in his heart, but it didn't show on his face, but his power grew stronger and stronger. The other disciples were fine, but Lu Dao, who endured the gaze of his master's death alone, felt extremely tormented. He quickly said, returning to his master, half a month ago, Wang Yuan from Yunmeng County passed away. His eldest son Wang Yuan went to Mount Hua 7 days ago to seek help, so junior brother Jiangning went there. Yue Buqun frowned and said, "What's going on? Tell me more carefully." "Yes." Lu Dao breathed a sigh of relief in his heart and continued, Wang Yuan said that shortly after his father passed away, there was not enough time to be buried. Their butler took the opportunity to entangle with a group of Jianhu people who took his property and drove him and his wife and children out of the house. Wang Yuan had a disability and only had one daughter under his knee. He was unable to resist, so he went up the mountain to seek help. Yue Buqun frowned and asked, even if the family property has been taken by outsiders, it should also be reported to the government. The government will handle it. Why did you come to Huashan? Although the world is chaotic nowadays, it is also a unified dynasty, and Yue Buqun still feels that such things can be reported to the government. Master is somewhat unaware. Shi Daisy interjected, the county officials in Yunmeng County took advantage of the butler's benefits and colluded with each other. After Wang Yuan reported to the officials, the county officials said he was falsely accused. Wang Yuan not only did not pursue the property back home, but was also beaten with 20 sticks and thrown out of the yamen. Not bad, Lu Dao exclaimed with indignation. The butler had Wang Yuan beaten up and his wife and children kidnapped after hearing that he was reporting to the government. He said he wanted his wife and children to serve him, which was considered a punishment for him reporting to the government. Wang Yuan reported that he had no official position and his wife and children were abducted. He was in despair and wanted to seek death. Later, he learned from other people that our Huashan sect is a prestigious and righteous sect, renowned in the martial arts world. The disciples of our sect are chivalrous and righteous. When he had no choice but to seek help from us, he came to our Huashan sect. Wang Yuan said that if we could help him avenge his wife and children, he would be willing to offer all his family assets. After hearing this, junior brother Jiangning decided to go down the mountain with them to help Wang Yuan. I see. Yue Buqun stroked his beard and nodded, his anger slightly extinguished in his heart, especially when he heard outsiders say that their Huashan sect was a prestigious and righteous sect, and even had a hint of joy when he heard them. But when he heard the words behind him, he frowned again. Since the government does not care about this injustice, it is only natural for my Huashan disciples to take the lead. Why should they offer their family property as a reward? Ning Er is usually a sensible person, how can he be so ignorant? If it is spread that people say that Yue Buqun is a hypocrite, he has taught you villains who take advantage of others' wealth and have corrupted the reputation of our Huashan sect. How can you let me establish myself in the martial arts world in the future? Chapter 3. Jiangning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yue Buqun scolded the crowd. Before his master passed away, he handed over Mount Hua to him and encouraged him to promote the sect. In order to fulfill his master's last wish, he devoted almost his entire life to Mount Hua. Over the past few decades, he has been cautious and careful, walking on thin ice, and has developed the sect to the present day. Mount Hua is his painstaking effort, and he will never allow any disciples in the sect to bring any stain to the sect, including his wife and daughter. Now I hear that Jiangning actually takes action for the sake of someone else's property. Although the starting point is good, it is inevitable that it will fall on people's tongues. Ning Er is too immature. On the side, Ning Zhong also frowned and said. Upon hearing Yue Buqun speak so seriously, Lu Dao was so frightened that his lips trembled and he couldn't say a word for a long time. Master, calm down. At this moment, a disciple next to him stood up. Gao Zhenming bowed to Yue Buqun and said, Master blamed junior brother Jiangning. Junior brother Lu didn't finish speaking just now. After listening to Wang Yuan's experience, junior brother Jiangning told him that my Huashan disciple was taught by my master to fight against the strong and support the weak, and uphold justice. Since Wang Yuan sought help from Huashan, he Jiangning should accept it. As for his family property, the Huashan sect will not take a penny. Jiangning junior brother said that since the government doesn't care, then Huashan Guan. If the law can no longer bring justice to the victims, and even bring oppression to the parties involved, then maintaining justice is the meaning of the existence of the Huashan sect. Okay. As soon as Gao Zhenming finished speaking, Yue Buqun let out a loud shout, which frightened everyone present. I saw Yue Buqun's fair face turn red, his eyes bright, and his expression slightly excited. Well said. Ning Er's ability to say these words means that he has not forgotten Dundan's teachings as a teacher. At this moment, Yue Buqun's anger in his heart had been swept away. Seeing that master was finally no longer angry, the disciples including Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming breathed a sigh of relief. Ning Zhongzi also smiled. Senior brother taught a good disciple. Yue Buqun had already calmed down at this moment, but there was still a hint of a smile on his face. However, the next second, he thought of something and frowned, saying, Yunmeng County is only 1 or 2 days away from Huashan. Ninger had already gone down the mountain 7 days ago, and even though there were some setbacks, he should have returned. Why hasn't he come back today? Upon hearing this, Lu Dao shook his head. I don't know. After pondering for a while, Yue Buqun asked, You just said that the evil servant butler of the Wang Yuan family was entangled with some people from the martial arts world. What kind of people are those? After thinking for a moment, Lu Dao replied, Wang Yuan said that at that time, the butler brought more than 10 men to his house and without hesitation, drove him out of the Wang family. Those men were all carrying swords and weapons, and it was not easy to provoke at first glance. Yue Buqun furrowed his brows and said, Since there were so many people on the other side, why didn't there be a few of you who went down the mountain with Ning Er at that time, and didn't advise him, instead leaving him alone? It's been so many days and I haven't even thought about going down the mountain to see the situation. Seeing that his master's face had become unsightly, Lu Dao lifted his heart again and cautiously replied, Master asked our fellow disciples not to go down the mountain before going down. We dare not disobey him. Yue Buqun's eyebrows furrowed and tightened as he heard the words. Without saying a word, his face sank like water. Seeing that his master's face was getting worse and worse, Shi Daizhi stepped forward and said, Master, don't worry. My junior brother's martial arts are higher than mine. I think those people are just some who only know some martial arts. They won't be my junior brother's opponents. He hasn't come back yet, so there should be some delay on the way. Yes. Lu Dao quickly agreed, those people are definitely not opponents of junior brother, and we have advised junior brother before to wait for master to come back. However, junior brother is a person with his own opinions and insists on following Wang Yuan down the mountain. We can't resist it, so we have to let him go. After speaking, Lu Dao felt a bitterness in his heart. Their junior brother has the smallest seniority in the sect, but his martial arts skills are the highest, on par with his senior brother, and he is extremely independent. Although he looks kind on weekdays, he has a temperament of not being close to strangers, and his personality is completely opposite to that of his senior brother. Bastard! As soon as Lu Dao finished speaking, Yue Buqun let out a loud shout, which startled him greatly. Yue Buqun's sword eyebrows stood upright, his face trembled constantly, and his expression was filled with anger. He reached out to land, and his breathing became rapid. Ning is your junior brother, and you let him go down the mountain alone to deal with villains. As the saying goes, 2 fists are difficult to defeat 4 hands, let alone the fact that there are more than 10 people on the other side. Although Ning has good martial arts skills, he is still young and has not been down the mountain before. He has not yet been exposed to the dangers of the world. There must be more than 10 people on the other side, among whom there must be an old hand who has been wandering in the martial arts world for many years. Ning will inevitably be hit by the opponent's hands. You are senior brothers, so it's good to go down the mountain together to have some support, but not only are you not going, but you are also shifting the blame here. Shimming, you are obedient and push yourself completely. If I don't let you go down the mountain, you won't go down. If I ask you to work hard to cultivate, have you listened? No matter how big the teacher's life is, can there be a great thing to save people? Yue Buqun sternly scolded disciples such as Landing Dao and Gao Zhenming, clearly showing real anger. Master, calm down, disciple is guilty. Lu Dao's face turned pale with fear, and he knelt down on the ground with a weak knee, admitting his mistake to Yue Buqun. Yue Buqun became more and more angry as he spoke, even lifting his palm, with purple air floating between his palms. The other disciples were so frightened that they knelt down to the ground when they saw this scene. Master, calm down. We were wrong. Ning Zhongze was also surprised when he saw Yue Buqun's movements. Senior brother. However, before she could speak, Yue Buqun's movement stopped. Yue Buqun looked at the group of disciples and said coldly, Ning has been down the mountain for 7 days, and I don't know what the situation is now. I want to go down the mountain to Yunmeng County to see if Ning really encounters any accidents. As for you, I will punish you after I come back. After finishing speaking, Yue Buqun shook his sleeves and hurriedly walked down the mountain without waiting for his disciples. However, as soon as he was about to leave, his movement stopped and he looked down at the mountain. Ning Zhongze had originally planned to go down the mountain with Yue Buqun, but seeing his abnormal behavior, she was about to speak. However, the next second, her gaze also followed Yue Buqun's gaze. The people kneeling on the ground also turned around to look. I saw a figure walking up the mountain road from the foot of the mountain, which was exceptionally familiar. When the distance got closer, the person's appearance reflected in everyone. He is about 10, 5, or 6 years old, but not low in stature. He is dressed in a blue and white robe, with a relatively delicate face. His eyebrows and eyes are cold, and his appearance is not particularly outstanding. However, his eyes are as bright as obsidian, shining brightly. The young man, wearing a robe in his hand and a long sword tied around his waist, was walking step by step up the mountain road without any movement in his upper body. The rugged mountain road was as smooth as walking on a flat ground at his feet. At this moment, the young man looked up and saw Yue Buqun and others, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. However, he did not shout loudly, but still walked towards the mountain, although his footsteps were a bit faster, but even so, his upper body still did not shake. When the young man walked down the mountain road and stepped onto the flat ground, he put down his robe and walked step by step. When he saw the people kneeling on the ground, his eyes became even more surprised, but he didn't ask anything. Instead, he came to Yue Buqun and Ning Zhongze and bowed. Disciple Jiangning, pay respects to master and mother. The cold voice, like his cold face. Chapter 4. Late Justice or Justice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Master and mother have been away for 2 or 3 months. How have you been lately? Have you had a smooth journey? Looking at the young man in front of him, Ning Zhong smiled. Okay, thanks to Ning concern. Did you practice martial arts seriously when your master and I were not on the mountain? Jiangning's expression was calm and composed, saying, speaking of Shenyang, although Shifu and Shenyang have not been in Huashan during this period, the teachings of Shifu from the past are still in my ears, and I dare not slack off for a day. After hearing the answer, Ning Zhong's smile deepened and his expression became more satisfied. After the answer, Jiangning's face also showed a smile, melting like cold ice. Unlike Ning Zhong, during the conversation between his wife and disciple, Yue Buqun's gaze swept over Jiangning's entire body and found that there were no scars or signs of internal injury on his body. His expression was peaceful. At this moment, Yue Buqun said calmly, "How did you go down the mountain this time? Can you help Wang Yuan save his wife and daughter?" Jiangning was not surprised to hear this. Yue Buqun must have known the reason why he went down the mountain from the mouths of Lu Dao and others. Since Yue Buqun asked this question, there was no intention of holding him accountable for going down the mountain against his teacher's orders. Jiangning nodded and said, returning to Master's words, "Wang Yuan's wife and children have been saved intact, and his property has also been recovered." Yue Buqun nodded and then asked, "Will there be any twists and turns on the way? What difficulties will you encounter?" Jiangning smiled and said, "After I went down the mountain, I followed Wang Yuan to Yunmeng County. Later, I learned from his population that Wang Yuan had not lied. I confirmed this in person from the housekeeper and those people. Later, I helped Wang Yuan personally rescue his wife and daughter, and recapture the part of the property that the housekeeper embezzled. Then I went to the county government to find the supervisor of the county of Yunmeng County, and recovered another part of Wang Yuan's property. Wang Yuan wanted to give the property as a reward for the kindness of Huashan Sect, but I didn't accept it." Yue Buqun asked again, "Has his wife and daughter been humiliated?" Jiangning shook his head. "No, before I went, the housekeeper of the Wang family and the villains wanted to use force against Wang Yuan's wife and daughter, but his wife and daughter refused to resist death and wanted to refuse to threaten with death. The housekeeper first took the property of the master's family. If he forced the master's family to commit suicide again, fearing that the people would not be ashamed of Yunmeng, he would not force them anymore. Instead, he would lock his wife and daughter in the firewood room. Every day, he would eat porridge to make them obey. Until I went, they were saved." Yue Buqun nodded in satisfaction and commented on Jiangning's action, "Not bad, you did a great job. You didn't rush to help someone by blindly believing Wang Yuan's one-sided words, but instead relied on multiple verifications to confirm their accuracy before offering assistance. If you were biased, you would believe, and if you were listening, you would understand." Later, he went to the county government to recover some of the Wang family's property, fearless of power and upholding justice. Well done. Yue Buqun did 2 good things in a row, indicating that he was very satisfied with Jiangning's actions. Jiangning always wore a smile on her face, standing in place without being overjoyed by Yue Buqun's praise, which made Yue Buqun even more satisfied. "Master, what are you, senior brothers?" At this moment, Jiangning spoke up and looked at Laodi Nu, Lu Dao, and others who were still kneeling on the ground, with doubts in their eyes. Upon hearing this, Lu Dao raised his head and gave Jiangning an ugly smile, then lowered his head and dared not speak. From the time Jiangning went up the mountain to talking to Yue Buqun, they dared not say a word. If Yue Buqun didn't let them get up, they dared not get up and just knelt down obediently. However, after kneeling for a long time, the ground became hard again, and the knee began to ache like a needle. Young Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming were okay to say, but Lao Dino felt uncomfortable. He is an old man with old arms and bones. Although he possesses martial arts skills, he can even beat his master to death with his fists. He can't stand kneeling down like this. At first, he was able to kneel upright, but after kneeling for a while, he couldn't hold on anymore. His legs began to sway, and he had to use his hands to support the ground, which made him feel a bit better. However, he still felt uncomfortable. His legs swayed as if he was about to take off. Ying Bailuo, kneeling next to him, tightly closed his mouth, pursed his lips again and again, his shoulders kept shaking, and his face turned red, unable to laugh. Humph. Yue Buqun snorted coldly upon hearing this, but not towards Jiangning, but towards Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, and others. They are both disciples of Mount Hua, but they let their junior brothers go down the mountain alone to deal with the villains, guarding their master's orders without realizing the principle of urgency and power. They insist on waiting for me to come back. By then, the Wang Yuan family would have been harmed by the evil servants. What use would I be when I come back? Will I go and collect the corpses for others? As fellow senior brothers, they don't even understand this principle. Yue Buqun let out a cold snort again and looked at them coldly, saying, "It's just that Ning Heir can come back safely this time. If there is really anything unexpected, as senior brothers, you have done nothing. Watching him have an accident, I will definitely not spare you." Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming and others had bitter faces and were unable to refute, unable to say a word. What senior brothers said is also correct. Jiangning said calmly, "We must be careful and cautious before we know the truth or falsehood of the enemy. We must consider the long term and be fully prepared to avoid wasting our lives. However, how should we discuss in the long run? To what extent should we prepare? Prepare this, consider that, prepare this, do we need to prepare the next one? After considering this, do we need to consider the next one? Prepare to prepare, plan to plan, when can we calculate? When can we calculate? I can wait, senior brothers can wait, can Wang Yuan wait? Can the next Wang Yuan also wait? It's all about justice. What is justice? Eliminating the strong and supporting the weak is justice, punishing the evil and promoting the good is justice. Since it's justice, it doesn't seem like it's okay to be late for a while. But if we wait until our master comes back to help Wang Yuan, his wife and daughter will have been harmed by someone. At that time, we will certainly avenge him and reclaim his property. So what? Is delayed justice still justice? Jiangning's voice was not loud, but also very calm. It was so calm that there was no emotional fluctuation or any hint of criticism or lesson, but to Lu Dao and others, it was like a knife cutting through their hearts. Every time Jiangning said a word, Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, and others would bury their heads a little lower. By the time Jiangning finished speaking, they had already buried their heads deep into the ground. On the contrary, the anger on Yue Buqun's face gradually dissipated with Jiangning's words, and even a few strands of laughter appeared in the end. His disciple has this temperament. He is usually very quiet, not anxious or irritable, and does not show his emotions. Although he is young, he is extremely independent. Just like now, he has his own understanding of the world and justice, which is completely different from Linghu Chang's personality. He is also very talented and has been on par with his eldest disciple since he was young. Sometimes Yue Buqun feels that if it weren't for Jiangning being younger than all his disciples, he would be more suitable to become a senior brother. Chapter 5. Using Bodhisattva's heart to use thunder techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright, you guys get up. Finally, Ning Zhongzi spoke up. Ning Heir is right. The delayed justice is no longer considered justice. You must remember it in the future. Yes, thank you, senior sister. Thank you, junior brother. Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, Shidaizi, and others gradually stood up to salute Ning Zhongzi, and finally thanked Jiangning with a look of shame on their faces. Humph. Yue Buqun snorted coldly again, but it was not as heavy as before. Since Ning Zhongzi had let them all get up, he would have let it go. By the way, after you went to Yunmeng County, what kind of people were those in the martial arts world? Yue Buqun seemed to remember something again and asked Jiangning. Jiangning smiled at the words and said, "They are just some people who only know martial arts. There are no powerful ones, so dealing with them is nothing." Yue Buqun nodded, but frowned and said, "Since that's the case, why did it take so long to return to the mountain?" On the way back, the disciple passed by Anyang County and found that there was a thief in that area. The Anyang County government issued a reward, thinking that our sect was financially strapped and relying on our master to support us. The disciple was unhappy and spent some time catching the thief to ease the master's burden. As Jiangning spoke, he took out an ingot of silver from his sleeve and handed it over with both hands, totaling 10 taels. Although 10 taels of silver may not sound like a lot, the purchasing power is already great. 1 or 2 taels of silver can buy 2 stones of rice, while 1 stone of rice weighs about 100 to 150 kilograms. Yue Buqun remained silent. After a moment, Yue Buqun waved his hand and said, "Since this is what you obtain from catching thieves, you can keep it yourself. You don't have to worry about the livelihood inside the sect. As a teacher, you will find a way to solve it. Just focus on practicing martial arts." Yes. Upon hearing this, Jiangning collected the silver and put it back into her sleeve. Since Yue Buqun has said so, if he continues to persist, it will make Yue Buqun embarrassed. Alright, we're only back today. You guys go down first and prepare for dinner. We'll also pay homage to our ancestors later. Worshipping ancestors. Jiangning raised her eyebrows upon hearing this. I usually only bow when Yue Buqun accepts disciples or on important days of the Huashan sect, not on weekdays. Today is not a major day. Yue Buqun and Ning Zhongzi have just returned and are going to worship their ancestors. They are taking in apprentices again. Yes. Jiangning didn't ask much, just responded and prepared to return to the room, but was stopped by Yue Buqun. By the way, Ninger. Yue Buqun asked Jiangning, what did you do with the butler and those 10 or so people later on? Upon hearing the master's inquiry, Jiangning did not hesitate. Kill it. The voice was very light, as if saying something insignificant. Yue Buqun was stunned for a moment. Kill them all. Jiangning nodded, her face calm. Yes. Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, Shi Daizi and others were all stunned and looked at each other. Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming entered the Huashan sect for some time, and most of them started later than Jiangning. They knew nothing about Jiangning, but occasionally heard their senior brother say that Jiangning was brought back from outside 12 years ago by his master. At that time, Jiangning was only 3 years old, and he is still only 15 years old. Their junior brother has never seen him go down the mountain since they met. Except for one time when Yue Buqun came in high spirits and felt that Jiangning was too homey, he insisted on organizing a sect spring outing and forcibly dragged Jiangning out for a poor trip to Shaanxi. Apart from that, Jiangning did not go down the mountain again. Even if there were a few times when the master took a few of their disciples to visit other 5 sacred sword sects to brush their faces and make them familiar, Jiangning did not go and stayed in Huashan. This led to him being a disciple of Huashan, but the other disciples of the 5 sacred sword sects did not see him, only knowing that he was such a person. In their impression, Jiangning usually only practices martial arts and reads books, and then has no other entertainment activities. Even Lingshan Jr.'s sister said he is very boring. Last time he went down the mountain with Wang Yuan to Yunmeng County, it was his first time going down the mountain, but he didn't expect to kill people and so many people just this time. They have never killed anyone before, and they often encounter injustice when going down the mountain. However, none of them can remain so ordinary after killing someone like Jiangning, as if he was not killing a person, but a pig or a dog. This attitude made all the senior brothers and others shudder. In the past, they thought that Jiangning Jr. brother's usually calm appearance was just due to his temperament, but at this moment, they felt more like a kind of indifference. Yue Buqun frowned and asked again, what about that county official? Did you also kill him? There was a hint of inexplicable nervousness in the expression when asking. Jiangning shook her head and said, no, I just asked him to return Wang Yuan's property and leave. Yue Buqun nodded upon hearing this, but he didn't feel the same nervousness as before. Jiangning's expression was calm as water. He did not kill the county official, but he suddenly died 5 days later, with an unknown cause of death. All right, Ning'er, you must have worked hard all the way. You go down first and rest. I will have Dino call you when we have dinner next. Yes. Jiangning nodded and turned around to leave. Watching his departing figure, Ning Zhong, who remained silent on the side, couldn't help but speak. Senior brother, Ning Er. There is a hint of concern in the tone. Jiangning's indifferent attitude towards killing without blinking her eyes made her afraid of going down the wrong path in the future. It's okay. Yue Buqun knew what his wife was thinking and shook his head. Although Ning'er is young, he has his own ideas in his heart. We don't have to worry. Seeing her husband say so, Ning Zhongze had no choice but to nod. After returning to his room, Jiangning placed the sword on his waist on the table. This room is very simple, except for a bed, table, and chairs. There is only one wardrobe for storing clothes, and nothing else. The only eye-catching thing is the thick pile of books placed on the table. Jiangning came to the window and pushed open the window to disperse the air inside the house. As soon as he pushed open the window, he saw the distant green mountains. Clouds covered the top of the mountain, and the peaks appeared and disappeared. The exterior walls of the wooden house were covered with ivy, creating a vibrant spring atmosphere. After pushing open the window, Jiangning sat down at the table by the window and stared out of the window, lost in thought. It has been 12 years since he came to this world. 12 years ago, he was wearing clothes on a 3-year-old child in a village. At that time, a horse bandit entered the village and washed the entire village with blood. His birth mother hid him in a secret place, but in the end, he was found by the group of horse bandits while searching for his life. At that time, only he was alive in the village. Just as the bandits were about to strike him, Yue Buqun, who was passing by the village, saved him. Jiangning will always remember the face reflected on the snow-white blade. Yue Buqun killed the group of bandits and then brought him back to Huashan, until now. Chapter 6. Boundary Division. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before climbing Mount Hua, Jiangning did not know what kind of world this was. It was only after learning the name of Yue Buqun, Ning Zhongze, Yu Lingshan, and Linghu Chong that he realized that this was the world of Xiaoao. He hasn't seen much of Xiaoao Jianghu and doesn't have a deep impression. He doesn't have much interest in these things, only knows some general things, including the death of Yue Buqun and the controversy about Yue Buqun himself. Is Yue Buqun a hypocrite? Some people say that he is a cunning and ambitious person who seeks to dominate the martial arts world. He is willing to persecute his wife and daughter and his disciples in order to ward off evil swordsmanship. Some people say that he was actually forced to resort to risky tactics and spared no effort to promote the Huashan sect. He doesn't know. Since he went to Mount Hua, Yue Buqun has been teaching him to be chivalrous and righteous, to eradicate the strong and support the weak, and not to bully the weak. He has been raising him ever since. He didn't know if Yue Buqun was what others called a hypocrite, but at least in his view, he had never seen Yue Buqun's hypocritical side in the past 12 years. Does Yue Buqun want to dominate the martial arts world? Jiangning doesn't know. At least for the past decade or so, he did not see any ambition in Yue Buqun. Although he never told his disciples about the difficulties of the sect, Jiangning could sometimes catch the occasional hint of fatigue in his eyes, as well as the invincible candlelight in the late night when the money and silver in Huashan were insufficient. Can a person still have the energy to dominate the martial arts world when facing difficulties in family and sect expenses? Jiangning still doesn't know. People are diverse, complex, and constantly changing. At every stage of life, after each experience, there are new perspectives and choices. A gentleman or a hypocrite, perhaps just in a moment of thought. Whether Yue Buqun is a gentleman or a hypocrite, Jiangning doesn't care. For him, Yue Buqun saved him, raised him, and treated him with kindness. Yue Buqun is kind to him, he must admit it. So Jiangning doesn't care about these things. Since Yue Buqun's lifelong wish is to promote Mount Hua, he must help Yue Buqun fulfill this wish. Jiangning's gaze fixed on the distance, and for some reason, he suddenly remembered a sentence Zhuge Liang said to Liu Bei in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. To capture the general's aspirations. Jiangning's gaze flickered as she murmured. After regaining consciousness, Jiangning's thoughts returned to the present. Since he went up the mountain, he has been practicing diligently, spending all his time except for reading books in his spare time practicing. Others such as Lu Dao and Yu Lingshan do not understand why Jiangning practices so hard. Only Jiangning knows that the reason why he works so hard is not only to repay Yue Buqun, but also for his own ideals. Fortunately, his talent is good, and even Yue Buqun is amazed. At this age, he has reached the strength of a second-rate expert, and he ranks high among the second-rate experts, which is not found in the entire Five Mountains Sword Sect. Ling Hucheng is still in his 20s and 50.5 years old, and his strength is also at the level of a second-rate expert. Although the power of the Huashan sect is weak now, Ling Hucheng is actually a leading figure among the second-generation disciples of the entire Wuyue sword sect. With Ling Hucheng as a reference, Jiangning can achieve a level of talent comparable to him at the age of 15. This shows that Jiangning's talent is so high that even though Yu Lingshan, who does not fight against Jiangning, said that Yue Buqun picked up a treasure. Although Yue Buqun didn't say anything, every time he went to visit other five sacred sword sects, he would mention Jiangning's name and his strength. Unfortunately, his face still had a casual expression, as if he had a large number of disciples like Jiangning under his command. So much so that although the disciples of the five sacred sword sect have not seen Jiangning, they are still considered well-known for a long time. There is no specific division of martial arts realm in this world, and it is unknown whether it is because these people in the martial arts world lack culture and cannot think of it, or because it is just like this. Generally, in the martial arts world, the distinction between martial arts masters is only based on non-entry, third-rate, second-rate, and first-class masters. Originally, there was no such thing as not being in the mainstream, mainly to consider the emotions of those who lack talent in the martial arts world, and reluctantly assign a non-mainstream to give them a sense of participation. Otherwise, when someone walks in the martial arts world, if they ask about their strength, they won't even reach third-rate, and they will still say they are a martial arts person. You can't even reach the threshold to enter the martial arts world. It's really embarrassing. You can leave the group yourself, don't let us kick you out. Not entering the mainstream refers to people who have no internal strength and rely solely on martial arts to wander the martial arts world. They wander on the edge of the martial arts world, and if they accidentally suffer a serious injury, they will basically shed tears in the martial arts world. Representative figures. Those killed by Lin Zhennan and Jiangning. Third-rate experts are slightly better than those who are not in the mainstream, and they are still the bottom players in the martial arts world, but they are much stronger than those who are not in the mainstream. For example, the four shios of the Qingqing sect, Lin Zhennan, is already a middle-aged man in his teens, but he is not a match for young people such as Hou Renying and Hong Renxiong in martial arts. People in the martial arts world, such as third-rate masters, have finally cultivated a little bit of internal power, but their martial arts are average. They can only go out in groups and fight side by side. Going out alone is likely to cause accidents. Representative figures. Yu Lingshan, Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, and other second-generation disciples of the five sacred sword sect. It was precisely because Yu Lingshan was a third-rate expert that Yue Buqun and Ning Zhong became so nervous when they found out she had sneaked down the mountain. Second-rate experts, such as those in the martial arts world who have basically gained self-protection ability, have already cultivated their own internal power, and their internal power is not low. They can walk normally in the martial arts world, as long as they do not die, accidents will not occur. For example, Ling Hucheng often walks alone in the martial arts world, but Yue Buqun is not very worried. But the people in the martial arts world and the realm of second-rate masters are also uneven. Some people, although both belong to second-rate masters, have a huge difference in actual combat power, and may end the battle in a few rounds during the confrontation. Representative figures: Jiangning and Ling Huchong. Although people in the martial arts world at the level of second-rate masters have cultivated their internal power, this does not mean that their strength will not slip. If they think they have already cultivated their internal power and become complacent, and neglect their cultivation, their internal power will gradually flow away, and in the end, they will fall to the level of third-rate masters. First-class experts, who have already become top experts in the Jianghu, are usually famous experts in the Jianghu for a long time, such as the head of the Five Mountain Sword Sect, Yue Buqun of the Huashan Sect, Mr. Mo of the Huashan Sect, the Three Dings of the Huashan Sect, Calm Ease, Calm Quietness, Calm Leisure, the Tianmen Taoist of Mount Taishan Brand, Zhuolingchan, Fei Bin and others of the Songzhan Sect, as well as Yu Canghai, the leader of Qingqing Taoist Temple outside the Five Mountain Sword Sect, Let's Go of the Sun Moon Sect, the Recipe of Shaolin Temple, and the Vanity of Wudang Sect, all of which can be included in the scope of first-class experts. Although there are many top-notch experts in the martial arts world, the differences between them are even greater than those between second-rate experts. For example, compared to Ren Wuxing and Fang Zheng, although both of them belong to the level of first-class experts, if Ren Wuxing and Fang Zheng want to deal with Yu Canghai will be defeated or even killed in a few moves, which is the difference between them. Chapter 7. Innate Realm. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Although Yu Canghai is honored to join the leader of the Five Mountain Sword Sect and the leader of Shaolin Temple, the Big Dipper of Mount Tai in the Wulin, he is more than capable of beating Yue Buqun. Yue Buqun explained the level division of experts in the martial arts world during his lecture with the disciples of Huashan, and mentioned him and Yu Canghai from the Qingqing sect at that time. Jiangning remembers the original words of Yue Buqun at that time. What I say to you next will resonate with your ears and not be spread, otherwise Master Yu will cause trouble for my Huashan sect. Although Master Yu has excellent martial arts skills and is a first-class expert in the martial arts world today, if I really engage in a fierce battle with him, he will be defeated within 50 rounds. In a life-and-death battle, within 20 rounds, Yu Canghai will die under my master's sword. When Yue Buqun said these words, there was a faint smile on his face, very calm. However, despite this, Yue Buqun said that his strength was not as strong as the leader of the Songzhan sect, Zhuolingchan, let alone the former head of the Sun and Moon cult. If we use Yu Canghai as a comparison, Yue Buqun is equivalent to about 3 Yu Canghai, Zhuolingchan is equivalent to 5 Yu Canghai, and Ren Wuxing is equivalent to at least 10 Yu Canghai. As for Master Fang Zheng of Shaolin Temple, he is not sure. Yue Buqun only said that Master Fang Zheng has a high level of cultivation, which is far behind him. So it seems that Fang Zheng started with at least 15 Yu Canghai. In fact, according to common sense, Ren Wuxing and Fang Zheng can no longer be considered as first-class experts. They need to advance to a higher level, but in the martial arts world, there are only these 4 levels, and the higher level is the unparalleled experts with innate realm. The innate realm, what exactly is this realm? No one in the current martial arts world knows, but 1 or 2 can know. It is said that experts who reach this level have a youthful appearance, live to 100 years old with ease, and still walk briskly. Their internal strength is so powerful that they can form a protective and vigorous qi when released. Martial arts experts in this level can no longer be described as ordinary people. Anyway, no matter how myths come, they are like gods and immortals, but no one knows whether this level is really like this. People in the martial arts world now refer to this level as the land god immortal realm. However, no one in the current martial arts world can reach the innate realm. The known experts who have reached the innate realm are the ancestors who founded the Wudang sect 200 years ago. Zhang Sanfeng. The founder of Wudang sect is the last known person to reach the innate realm. Legend has it that this immortal figure lived to the age of 120 and still had the same appearance, white hair and childlike appearance. However, when Zhang Sanfeng was 120 years old, he said he wanted to go down the mountain to explore the world. Since then, he has never returned to Wudang Mountain, and no one knows his whereabouts, whether he is alive or dead, and whether he has achieved enlightenment and risen as legendary. Since then, no one in the martial arts world has reached the innate level, and even now the overall strength of the entire martial arts world has declined. In the Jianghu today, even the Shaolin Temple's prescription certificate in the right path is still lamenting the difficulty of breaking the boundary. Perhaps only one person has a little hope. The East is undefeated. The current leader of the Sun and Moon cult, the number one in the world. No one knows what level he has reached now. Since the rumors in the martial arts world that Dongfang Bubi has refined the sunflower scripture, he has been staying at Haimu Cliff and devoted himself to cultivation, without appearing in the martial arts world again. No one knows what level he has reached or whether he has entered the innate level, and the Sun and Moon cult has not revealed it at all. This has become a legend in the martial arts world. Although it is unknown whether Dongfang Bubi has broken through his innate abilities, people in the martial arts world have tacitly not included him in the list of first-class experts, but have singled him out as a unique existence. This is the current situation of skilled players, with Dongfang Bubi leading the way and other top-notch experts flourishing. Although the experts in the martial arts world today are not as good as before, there are still many first-class and second-rate experts. Even though Jiangning's strength has reached the level of second-rate experts, he has not relaxed at all, but has worked even harder. But it's no use just relying on Jiangning's own efforts to become stronger. What Yue Buqun wants is to promote and revitalize the Huashan Sect, so that the disciples of that sect can keep up with their strength. This is not a fantasy world. Personal strength can pick stars and moon, and flipping hands can cover clouds and rain. A sect is a collective, and individual strength is secondary. To be strong, a sect must first have a deep foundation. The essence of a sect is nothing more than its disciples, leaders, and martial arts techniques. The disciples represent the backbone and strength of the sect, while the head represents the top strength of the sect and is the pillar of the sect. Martial arts and techniques are the most crucial for a sect. Without a good martial arts and techniques, there will never be a chance to reach the top of the sect. Just like the Huashan sect in Jiangning now, although Yue Buqun is a first-class expert and ranks quite high in strength among the 5 mountain sword sect, the overall strength of the sect is too strong, seriously dragging down Yue Buqun's legs. Now, Yue Buqun is moving forward with a heavy burden. At present, there are basically no good martial arts or swordsmanship in the Huashan sect. Just one book of Zixia Gong can be considered good. Although it cannot compare to the I Ching Jing of Shaolin Temple, it is also the treasure of the Huashan sect. Except for the sect leader, no one can cultivate it. Yue Buqun regards it as his destiny. Except for the purple cloud divine skill, the other Huashan martial arts are much worse and less abundant, with insufficient internal knowledge. As a result, the second-generation disciples such as Lu Dayo and Gao Zhenming are not very strong. If Jiangning wants to support the Huashan sect now, the first thing to solve is the problem of sect heritage. Jiangning pondered this question for a long time. Although he didn't remember much when he knew that the world was a world of laughter and pride, he also knew that there was a cave on the Sigua cliff of the Jade Maiden Peak of the Huashan sect, which contained many sword techniques that had already been lost. If those sword techniques could be brought out to increase the cultural heritage of the Huashan sect, not to mention being on par with Wudang and Shaolin, it wouldn't be like now. Apart from the Yue Buqun couple and Ling Huchong, there was also him in the sect. I can't handle anything else. Jiangning had thought about directly informing Yue Buqun about the swordsmanship inside the cave, but there was no suitable excuse. If Yue Buqun asked him how he learned about it, he couldn't answer, and it was impossible to make up an excuse to deceive Yue Buqun. Yue Buqun is a meticulous person, and he can detect any loopholes in his words, which will be even more troublesome. Besides this, Jiangning also knows that there is a person living on the Sigua cliff. The wind of sword sect is clear and bright. Jiangning's impression of this person is not deep, only knowing that he is the one who taught Ling Huchong the 9 swords of Dugu. Another thing is that Yue Buqun mentioned his name when telling them about the struggle between the sword chi sects decades ago. Although this person disappeared after the defeat of the sword sect, Jiangning knew that he had always lived on the Sigua cliff, and his existence was also one of the reasons why Jiangning did not choose to casually find an excuse to inform Yue Buqun of the sword technique inside the cave. It's not difficult to know a secret, and it's not difficult to reveal it. The difficulty lies in how to create a seamless excuse to make someone believe without arousing suspicion from someone with a meticulous mind, especially since that person knows you very well. After removing the option of casually finding an excuse to perfunctory Yue Buqun, Jiangning also considered personally going to the Sigua cliff of the Jade Maiden Peak, entering the cave himself, and then returning to tell Yue Buqun. But the Jade Maiden Peak is very steep, and there is no difference between having a road and having no road. If there is any carelessness, it will fall down the mountain and be shattered to pieces. In addition, Yue Buqun has instructed that the Sigua cliff is the place where disciples of the Huashan Sect have been imprisoned and punished for violating the rules of our sect. Normally, disciples of the sect are not allowed to go there. These 2 reasons led to Jiangning's delay in telling Yue Buqun the secret of the Sigua cliff, intending to wait until his martial arts became stronger and he no longer feared the steep mountain road before going up. Although he was taken up the mountain by Yue Buqun at the age of 3, he only began practicing martial arts with Yue Buqun at the age of 7. 4 years ago, his strength reached the level of a third-rate expert. With caution, he was able to safely climb the Jade Maiden Peak. At that time, he came up with a way to intentionally offend Yue Buqun and punish him to think about the cliff face wall. Chapter 8. Back Hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, Yue Buqun has never punished him before. Sometimes, at most, he just said a few words verbally, and there was no heavier punishment. Sometimes, when Jiangning deliberately had some friction with other disciples of the same sect, Yue Buqun thought he was being bullied and scolded and punished the other disciples, treating him with warm words and warmth. Perhaps it was Jiangning's diligent practice and composure that made Yue Buqun feel that he was not a deliberate troublemaker, so he did not impose heavy penalties like he did to Ling Huchong. This left Jiangning speechless. After several unsuccessful attempts, Jiangning decided to curve and save the country. Although Yue Buqun did not punish him, he was very strict with Ling Huchong, and the severity was so severe that even a dog shook its head. Since Ling Huchong grew up, his outgoing personality has been scolded by Yue Buqun, with small training every 3 days, major training every 5 days, and even in severe cases, he has been reminded to face a cliff. So Jiangning decided to start with Ling Huchong. At first, he planned to think about the cliff under the guise of delivering food to Ling Huchong, and then pretended to be curious and explore, accidentally discovering the secret of the cave, and then reported it to Yue Buqun, so as to solve the problem. But when Jiangning took action, he surprisingly found that he couldn't compete with Lu Dao and Yu Lingshan. Lu Dao admires Ling Huchong very much, wishing he could stick to Ling Huchong every day, even licking dogs. Yu Lingshan, on the other hand, was a childhood sweetheart with Ling Huchong, and their relationship was extraordinary. These 2 people were both vying to bring food to Ling Huchong, and even had an argument. He couldn't get in a word on the side. Sometimes, even after a few more arguments, he was misunderstood by Ling Huchong. Although this young junior brother has a cold personality, his face is cold and his heart is warm. He still cares about this senior brother, which moved him deeply, and tears welled up in his eyes. After being unable to compete with Lu Dao and Yu Lingshan, who were childhood sweethearts, Jiangning changed his approach and suggested to Ling Huchong to actively search for the cave entrance. What Jiangning didn't expect was that Ling Huchong, a fool, couldn't understand his hints at all. No matter how Jiangning hinted, Ling Huchong was like a mentally disabled person. One time, The most obvious suggestion he made was to almost find the cave that had broken through the wall. However, Ling Huchong, a mentally disabled person, said that he had already been punished by his master on the wall of Sigua Cliff. He dared not destroy the area there, which made his master angry. No matter how much Jiangning tried to persuade him, it was useless to provoke him, which made Jiangning really have no way to deal with him. Jiangning had a heart to make the Huashan sect stronger, but the foolishness of his fellow disciples around him made him feel like he wanted to lead everyone to become bigger and stronger, but he was surrounded by pig teammates and couldn't move. Looking at the secret hidden in his heart that could make the sect stronger again, but unable to express it, Jiangning really didn't know what to do and has been dragging it on until now. He doesn't know when the official plot of笑傲江湖will start, but he also knows that as time goes by, it will be even more unfavorable for the Huashan sect. Now he has decided not to think about it. In a few days, he will personally go to Sigua Cliff. Thinking of this, Jiangning's thoughts stopped and he stood up to open the wardrobe, take out the clothes he had changed, and prepare to take a shower. The Huashan sect worships the spirits of ancestors of all dynasties by bathing and changing clothes in advance. After washing, Jiangning put the previous set of clothes back into the room. Just as he was about to go to the cafeteria, he saw Lao Dinu coming from afar. Jiangning junior brother, the food is ready. Master asked me to call you. Laudno hunched his back, his hair graying, and looked at Jiangning with a smile as he said. I understand, senior brother Xie. Jiangning nodded calmly, then crossed the door and walked towards the direction of the cafeteria with Lao Dino, without any conversation along the way. Lao Dinu is not surprised, Jiangning has this quiet personality. Walking on the way to the cafeteria, Jiangning looked ahead and didn't shake his upper body at all. The most obvious thing was that a leaf fell on his shoulder as he passed under a tree. He followed Jiangning for a while, but it didn't fall, not even shake, as if it had come to a standstill. It didn't fall off Jiangning's shoulder until a gentle breeze blew by. Seeing this scene, Laudno couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Junior brother Jiangning's martial arts have become more profound. Previously, Laudno felt that although Jiangning had reached the level of a second-rate expert, his true strength was also at the same level. If the two really fought, he would definitely win in the end. But at this moment, Laudno felt that if he fought against Jiangning again now, the outcome would be unknown. Jiangning walked in a square step, big and slow, looking leisurely, but not slow, with a perfect demeanor. If it weren't for the washed and white blue and white door underwear robe on his body, which was now covered in silk and satin, Lao Dino would have thought he was the nobleman of whose family. Looking at Jiangning walking beside him with a full demeanor, Laudno looked at his old appearance again, and his emotions surged into his heart. However, he concealed them, and no one else knew. However, Jiangning was unaware of Laudno's inner thoughts at the moment, and his mind began to contemplate the person Lao Dinu. Does he remember that this person seems to be an insider? Find a chance to kill him later. Thinking of this, Jiangning still looked straight ahead, but when Lao Dino didn't pay attention, his eyes turned to his side and then turned back, as if nothing had happened. When Jiangning and Lao Dino arrived at the cafeteria, more than 30 disciples including Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming had already arrived and were waiting for them. Inside the cafeteria, several young children had already eaten. These young children should be brought back by the master to be taken as apprentices. Jiangning just glanced over there, then stopped paying attention and sat down in his usual seat. I have made all senior brothers and sisters wait for a long time. Their Huashan sect has a total of over 30 disciples so far, including 6 female disciples, and a total of 7, including Yu Lingshan, who was the disciple of Ningzhong's. The remaining male disciples are the disciples of Yue Buqun. It's okay, it's okay. Anyway, we haven't waited long. Second senior brother won't come, so we dare not move our chopsticks first. Lu Dao smiled and said. The rules within the Huashan sect are very strict, with an orderly growth and development. Other junior brothers are not allowed to eat before their senior brothers move their chopsticks. But apart from this, everything else is fine. As long as you don't violate the rules, you have to make your own decisions for the rest of the time after your master Yue Buqun finishes teaching daily homework. I didn't see Yue Buqun and Ning Zhongzi in the cafeteria. They usually don't eat in the cafeteria, and when the food is ready, the disciples bring it to Yue Buqun. Only the disciples and Yu Lingshan come here to eat. Eating without words, sleeping without words. This is what Yue Buqun taught them, but when Lu Dayo and others eat, they can't help but chat. It's just that this time it's different. Before this, they had just been harshly scolded by Yue Buqun, and they didn't have much mood. In addition, there were a few young children eating in the cafeteria, and they couldn't chat easily. The meal was also quiet. After silently finishing the meal, Lauderno walked with everyone to the back hall. On the beam of the back hall, there are 4 big characters written. Use Qi to control sword. On both sides, there are long swords hanging, and in the middle, there is an incense table filled with rows of spiritual tablets. Yue Buqun and Ning Zhong are already waiting for them in the back hall. Chapter 9. Our ancestors have also been wealthy. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Disciple Yue Buqun today enrolled 7 children as disciples. May all the ancestors have a spirit in heaven to bless our Huashan disciples to study hard, be pure and self-loving, abide by the right path, abide by the rules of our sect, and not tarnish the reputation of our Huashan sect. Yue Buqun held an incense candle in his hand and respectfully kowtowed 4 heads towards the incense table. Jiangning and other Huashan disciples also knelt down and kowtowed to the spiritual positions of the successive Huashan masters. The young children stood in front of them, looking at the kneeling crowd with a somewhat bewildered expression, but also knelt down along with them. Yue Buqun stood up and looked at the disciples, then sat on the main seat with Ning Zhongzi, looking at the young children in front of him. After thinking for a while, he slowly spoke up. Today, when you join our Huashan sect, you must abide by the rules of the sect. If you violate them, you will be severely punished without mercy, and in severe cases, you will be executed without mercy. Our sect has been rooted in the martial arts world for hundreds of years. Although our martial arts skills are not unparalleled in the martial arts world, we are not afraid of other sects, but this is not important. Speaking of which, Yue Buqun deliberately paused for a moment to help these young children digest what he had said before. Then he continued speaking in the bewildered eyes of these children. Our Huashan sect was established 200 years ago, and the founder of the sect did not leave a name, only a surname Lu. The founder of the Lu family passed away shortly after founding the Huashan sect in Huashan. Before his passing, the founder once told his disciples that our Huashan sect is the true Xianmen sect, and the true founder was Guangning Zi and Hao Datong, who were one of the 7 sons of the Chuanjin sect in the past. At this moment, Jiangning, who had already stood up on the side, raised an eyebrow and was somewhat surprised. Is the Huashan sect of Xiao Jianghu a branch of the Chuanjin sect? He thought that the Huashan faction that was proud of the world was different from the Huashan faction in history. Yue Buqun had not mentioned this to them before. Unlike Jiangning's accident, Lu Dayo and other Huashan disciples did not react much. Some of them do not love reading, some do not read history, do not know Chuanjin teachings, and have not learned about Chuanjin's 7 sons, so even after Yue Buqun said these things, they only regard them as the history of the sect. Unlike his previous calm demeanor, Yue Buqun's eyes lit up faintly, and his overall demeanor changed. Seeing the puzzled expressions of his disciples, he smiled slightly and said, "It's normal for you to have this reaction. After all, the orthodox Chuanjin sect of the Xianmen sect has now dissipated, leaving only a few branches to survive in the world, and our Huashan sect is one of them. The remaining branches of the Chuanjin sect have gradually disappeared over hundreds of years of history, and now only the Huashan sect remains. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration for us to call ourselves the orthodox sect of the Xianmen sect. Oh, Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, Liang Fa, and other disciples nodded in confusion. Seeing this scene, Yue Buqun's smile froze for a moment. Talking about the history of the sect with these uneducated disciples is like playing the piano to a cow. Master, is it the Huashan sect founded in the late Song dynasty? Is the founder of the Chuangjiao sect the founder of Wang Chongyang, who led the army to resist the Jin dynasty? At this moment, a voice suddenly came from among the disciples, causing Yue Buqun, who was already a bit angry, to have his eyes lit up. When his gaze followed the source of the sound, he found it to be Jiangning. Not bad. Yue Buqun wore a smile on his face, his eyes filled with relief, and he said with a smile, "Ninger, how did you know?" Jiangning said, "I just stumbled upon it in a miscellaneous book." Despite Jiangning's words, Yue Buqun still had a pleased expression on his face, and then looked at the disciples with an unworthy expression on his face. Take a look at Ninger, and then take a look at yourself. I often tell you, as a teacher, that besides practicing martial arts, you should read more books, not to mention being able to achieve fame. My disciples in the martial arts world don't care about that, but at least they can also enrich their cultivation. What about you? I have never taken my teacher's words to heart. Especially you, Lu Dao. On weekdays, I encourage you to read more books. Either the wind makes it hard for you to open your eyes, or the loud sound of rain distracts you. If it weren't for my teacher forcing you to read, you might not even recognize a single character. Yue Buqun despised Lu Da for not being able to turn iron into steel. Their teaching of martial arts skills in the Huashan sect is usually passed down through word of mouth, rather than through books for learning. On the one hand, it is because he is afraid that if his disciples walk outside and are defeated by others, they will take away the secret script of Huashan martial arts, which will lead to the exile of Huashan martial arts. On the other hand, it is also because Yue Buqun and most of his disciples are illiterate. It's not that Yue Buqun doesn't allow them to learn, but rather that disciples like Lu Dao can't continue to learn. Forcing them to learn is useless, especially Lu Dao. After half a month of reading, he only knows 3 words, which angers Yue Buqun and makes his meticulously groomed beard crooked. Lu Dao, who was named and criticized, smiled awkwardly as he kept moving his steps and hid his figure behind Ing Bai Luo. He was afraid that Yue Buqun would get angry and have to deal with him again. Fortunately, Yue Buqun only said a few words without any intention of catching him and not letting go. After mentioning a few words about his disciples not paying attention to their studies, he continued with his previous words. Ning is right. My Xianmen patriarch is none other than Wang Chongyang's patriarch. Time is long, and many things are buried in the long stream of history. Many of Wang Chongyang's ancestors' deeds are no longer visible in the world, but you should know that the Huashan sect once surpassed Shaolin to become the world's largest sect. Oh! The eyes of disciples such as Lu Dao and Gao Zhenming suddenly lit up. If you want to tell them history, they may sound like they're listening to a heavenly book, but if you tell them that, they won't be tired anymore. Yue Buqun leaned his arm against the table, clenched his left hand slightly, and his eyes were bright. At this moment, his tone was slightly uplifted. Over 200 years ago, in the martial arts world, there were 5 top-notch masters who had unparalleled martial arts skills. Their names and taboos as teachers were no longer known, but it was known that martial artists at that time referred to them as the 5 wonders. Dongxie, Shidu, Nandi, Beijia, Zongshentong. In the martial arts world of those days, apart from the 5 wonders, no one could compare to them. Master, is our ancestor Wang Chongyang one of the 5 wonders? Before Yue Buqun could finish speaking, Lu Dao asked impatiently with an excited expression. Not bad. Without reprimanding, Yue Buqun nodded and said, Grandmaster Wang Chongyang is one of the 5 wonders of Zongshentong. As soon as Yue Buqun said this, Lu Dao and his disciples were all excited. They really didn't expect their head teacher to be so brilliant. Yue Buqun smiled and said, in the martial arts world back then, the 5 greats were all individuals with unique talents and talents. Although they were collectively known as the 5 greats, none of them were convinced by each other. They all wanted to become the number one in the world, so they agreed to hold the Huashan debate in Huashan to compete for the top spot in the world. At this point, Yue Buqun stopped slightly and looked at his disciples, only to find that their expressions were very excited, nervous, but also very hopeful. I hope Yue Buqun's next words will be what they think in their hearts. Upon hearing this, Jiangning slightly twisted her eyebrows and then smoothed them out again. He remembered that the Huashan sword debate was not only about the 5 wonders of the world, but also about the unique The 9E manual. However, it may have been too long, and that period of history has also been buried. Yue Buqun only knows a fragment of it. When discussing swordsmanship in Huashan, my founder, Wang Chongyang, surpassed all 4 masters and became the top martial artist in the world at that time. Amidst the anticipation in the eyes of many disciples, Yue Buqun slowly spoke out what they wanted to hear. Wow, Grandmaster is really amazing. Disciples such as Gao Zhenming and Ing Bailuo were all very excited, and Lu Dao clenched his fists tightly, his face turning red. They thought about the outcome, but when Yue Buqun said it himself, they were still excited. I originally thought that their Huashan sect was already brilliant enough to be the leader of the 5 sacred sword sect decades ago. However, I didn't expect their ancestors to be even more brilliant, surpassing the righteous leader Shaolin Temple to become the world's largest sect, and their founder Wang Chongyang was even the world's largest. Our ancestors are also wealthy. At this moment, Lu Dao wished he could immediately run out and tell everyone about the glorious history of the Huashan sect. And although those female disciples were not as exaggerated as they were, they also had their small mouths open in an O shape and their eyes wide open, which was really cute. However, at this moment, Yue Buqun suddenly let out a secret sigh. Although Huashan sect is our Xianmen sect, it dispersed after the death of Patriarch Wang Chongyang. The 7 sons of Huashan under his throne also left to establish their own Taoist sects, and our Huashan sect was established by Patriarch Hao Datong. Since the establishment of the Huashan sect, although it has not been as glorious as the Huashan sect in the past, it can still be considered a famous sect in the martial arts world and the leader of the 5 sacred sword sect. However, it is now much worse than before. Our Huashan sect has gone through many hardships, and later there was a battle between the 2 sword chi sects within the sect. Although our Chi sect won the battle, it also suffered heavy casualties and declined in population. Until now, it is no longer in its former glory. Chapter 10. Rules of the Huashan Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this point, Yue Buqun stood up and knelt down towards the altar on the incense table. The younger disciple Yue Buqun was unfilial. Before his master's death, he handed over the Huashan sect to his disciples. However, the disciples were unable to promote the Huashan sect and instead fell into poverty. The disciples were truly ashamed and had no face to face their ancestors. Yue Buqun's voice was sincere, his tone extremely heartbroken, and his guilt grew heavier on his face. Although Huashan is the orthodox branch of the Xianmen sect and a remnant of the Huashan sect, its disciples dare not claim to be the orthodox sect outside, fearing to insult our Xianmen reputation and their unfilial behavior. Seeing master like this, the other disciples also knelt down along with him. When the Huashan sect fell into the hands of Yue Buqun, it was already on the brink of extinction, and it was not his responsibility to become like this. Jiangning thought. However, he could not say that. Yue Buqun regarded the Huashan sect as his fate and did not allow others to say anything bad about it. Even now, Yue Buqun still believes that it is due to his own insufficient abilities. Yue Buqun's personality has been understood by Jiangning since we have been together for so many years. Get up everyone, this is my teacher's fault, it has nothing to do with you. After getting up, Yue Buqun asked his disciples to stand up, and then continued, although our Huashan sect is no longer in its former glory, it is also a legitimate and prestigious sect. We should not strive for strength or be brave and ruthless. Those who have just joined our Huashan sect should remember the words of a teacher, and those who have already joined Huashan sect should consolidate even more. At this point, Yue Buqun's face changed and he looked at them with a cold and stern expression. His tone was stern as he said, "If you break the rules of the sect and damage the reputation of our Huashan sect outside, I will personally clean up the sect." At this moment, Yue Buqun, who usually makes people feel like basking in spring breeze, has become like another person. The coldness in his words is like a steel knife scraping on everyone's bones, causing disciples such as Lu Dao, Gao Zhenming, Shi Daizi, Liang Fa, and Ing Bai Luo to shiver and quickly bow and say goodbye. "Yes, I will remember my master's teachings." Yue Buqun nodded, his face only looking better. Then he looked at the group of young children, and then at his disciples. After a moment of contemplation, he said, "Ninger, recite the rules of our sect so that junior brothers can know." After performing the apprenticeship ceremony, these children are already considered disciples of Huashan and are the junior brothers of Jiangning. Originally, Yue Buqun was preparing to instruct other disciples to recite, and under normal circumstances, it would be memorized by the senior brother of our sect. However, since Linghu Chong is not in Huashan, it should be Laudanu's responsibility to fulfill the senior brother's duties. However, Yue Buqun did not want to use him, and later it would be Liang Fa, Shi Daizi, and Lu Dao who came. After thinking for a moment, Yue Buqun was afraid that other disciples might not be able to memorize it, or that they might stutter and get stuck halfway through it, leaving an unprofessional impression on the newly introduced junior brothers. It was like slapping the face of the Huashan sect. In order to prevent Lu Dao and the Huashan sect from losing face, Yue Buqun still let Jiangning take responsibility. Although Jiangning is young and ranks last among his peers, he has stayed in Huashan for a considerable amount of time. He practices martial arts very diligently and enjoys reading books. He is knowledgeable and reasonable, and has a low-key personality. He also respects his senior brothers and sisters, and has good martial arts skills, making him the most suitable person to use. After hearing Yue Buqun's words, Laudanu's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Originally, this task should have been done by the senior brother when he was not around. However, Laudinu did not feel anything was wrong, perhaps it was because of Jiangning's previous actions that Yue Buqun loved him very much. Yes. Jiangning nodded and stood up, looking at the little junior brothers who were as tall as his waist. "Listen up, junior brothers. Our sect rules. The first precept is to bully teachers and destroy ancestors, the second precept is to bully the weak, the third precept is to be greedy and lustful, the fourth precept is to be cruel to one's fellow disciples, the fifth precept is to forget righteousness when seeking profit, the sixth precept is to be arrogant and complacent, and the seventh precept is to associate with evil. These are the 7 precepts, which are the rules of our Huashan sect. Please remember them, junior brothers." Jiangning spoke at a slow pace and enunciated clearly. These children could all hear clearly, and after listening, they all spoke in a naive voice. "Thank you, senior brother." Jiangning nodded and then retreated to the disciples of Mount Hua. However, after he finished speaking, Lu Dao and other Huashan disciples all looked bewildered. Is it that simple? How come this is different from the rules they carried before? It's so simple, they can do it too. Why didn't Master let them come? They also want to have a long face in front of their fellow disciples. Yue Buqun and Ning Zhong looked surprised. Their gate rules are not so simple. The original gate rules were complicated and lengthy, making it very difficult to memorize and understand. This is also normal. Originally, the Huashan sect was passed down by Hao Datong, while the Chuanzhen sect was the authentic sect of the Xianmen sect. Although the sect rules were obscure and difficult to understand, the disciples had a high level of culture and quality. Unlike the current Huashan disciples, although Yue Buqun tried to simplify and understand them as much as possible to cater to their understanding level, they were not so concise. Lu Dao often called the sect rules a headache when reciting them. However, the 7 precepts spoken by Jiangning made Yue Buqun secretly nod, much easier to understand and more concise than him. I have written it down. These are the words he will say to the new apprentices when he accepts them in the future. All right. Yue Buqun stood up, his hands behind his back, and said to the disciples. The apprenticeship ceremony has ended, and there is currently nothing to do at the door. You should go down and practice what you need to do, and do what you need to do. Yes. Jiangning and a group of Huashan disciples bowed and stepped back, while the newly recruited junior brothers were brought down by Ning Zhongzi, 2 female disciples named Yue and Xiaojun, to measure their bodies and make the Huashan sect's robes, which were the ones Jiangning wore. After leaving the back hall, Jiangning bid farewell to Lu Dao and returned to his room to bring the previously changed clothes to the river for cleaning. The clothes of the disciples of Mount Hua are all washed by themselves, which is the rule of Yue Buqun. The Huashan sect has no servants, except for Yue Buqun and Ning Zhongzi, all the others are disciples of Huashan. Although there are female disciples in Huashan, Yue Buqun did not let those female disciples be responsible for washing the clothes of all the disciples. In his words, both men and women are disciples of Huashan, and they are fellow martial brothers and sisters of the same sect in Huashan. No one is a vassal of others. How can they let elder martial sisters wash clothes for others and become servants?